Hi, everybody. We are live. Welcome to our discipline workshop. I'm actually going to give you guys just a couple minutes to sign on. I know bedtime can be tricky. Some of you have kids, you're in the other room. So I'm going to give you just a second to get settled. A couple things that you might want to grab: a paper and a pen or a journal would be fantastic. If your spouse is with you and is able to watch this, that's even great as well. This is going to be posted on YouTube. So I encourage you throughout the broadcast, if you have any comments, go ahead and write those on there, and I'll either get back to you on YouTube or through this program, or if you want to give me an email, you can always email me it, and I'll have that at the end for you. So again, just giving you guys a couple minutes to sign on. This is one of my favorite workshops. If you don't know who I am, I'm Jessica Serrano, and I'm with Ignite Academy, a school that we started just 3 years ago. One of our favorite things to do is to offer these free workshops to not only our parents at the school, but our community as well. This parenting thing isn't easy, and any way that we can support one another, I know, is much needed. So again, as you guys sign on, get that paper, that pencil ready. Just a couple more things. This discipline workshop was geared or created actually for the parents and the families at Ignite Academy. And currently we are serving elementary school kids. So a lot of the things we'll be talking about tonight will be for that age range, but I really think it can apply to a lot of different kids. Now, me coming from an education background, I'm coming at this with really two perspectives: one as a parent and one as a teacher, and also the co-founder of a school. So I'm hoping that I can offer a really just interesting perspective tonight. Now I'm going to go ahead and begin to just jump in. Again, if you have any questions during this, feel free to comment. This is not an easy workshop to do virtually, so any engagement would be amazing. This is part of a series. We actually started the year off with our immunity workshop for our parents. We're diving into discipline for this month, and coming in December, actually we just put it on our calendar, December 7th, we will have our nutrition workshop coming up. So we'd love for you to join us for that one as well, and that will be in person. So pretty fantastic. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you all tonight. I have some slides, some information that you might want to jot down, or if you revisit this again with your spouse, it's great for note-taking. Another suggestion is share this out with family members. You can share this out with neighbors. Another great one is we actually had one of our nannies / babysitters that was going to watch this as well. So it's a great tool to give some of those babysitters that are with your kids that, man, have they ever talked about discipline before or been exposed to that? So this could be a great resource. So again, our parenting workshop tonight is on disciplining your child. Hi, everybody that's signing in. If you want to comment, I'd love to hear from you. If you're a parent or if you're a guest tonight, so glad that you're here. So when we talk about discipline, we're all coming to this workshop with a mindset or an idea of what we think discipline is. A lot of us come with this with mixed emotions. A lot of us come with prior experience with discipline. And a lot of times that's negative, and that's what I've encountered throughout this. So if you feel comfortable and want to jot some of those feelings that you have associated with discipline or some emojis, please do that. But it can be a very complicated thing. And what I want to talk about first is really our mindset around discipline. What do we even think it is? If you had to define discipline right now, take a second. What is discipline? So when we're talking about discipline, I'm coming at this again from a lot of different angles, and I've read a variety of resources. I actually really enjoy diving into the idea of discipline, and I wanted to put some of these up on the screen because they're going to be a great resource for you. And all of them, again, offer a little bit of a different perspective. Some of you have seen the 5 love languages. We actually do with a workshop with that later on. That's a great one. If you have any adopted children or fostering, I would highly recommend The Connected Child. It's written partially by Karen Purvis, who is another great resource. Our oldest, who is now 12, she's going to be a teenager next week. This was a great book for me. It really gives you a different lens and really helps you identify some of the needs that's coming from children that come from trauma. But we have positive discipline. We have screen-free parenting on the screen right now. We have grace-based discipline, growing God's kids way. Again, this series tonight is really the cliff notes from all of these books. A lot of them my sisters actually recommended to me. So I just want to share the highlights of some of these books that can help us a little bit more with discipline. So back to that question, actually, I have to tell you a story first. So of course, discipline is part of my life. I have 4 kids ranging from 12 to 2. I'm also at Ignite Academy. I get to be in the classrooms a lot. So I have a lot of experience and probably have made a lot of mistakes when it comes to disciplining. And I just remember being a teacher fresh out of college, I don't know, maybe 21, 22 years old. And I'd have these parent-teacher conferences. So parents would come in and sit down with me, and their kids were doing really, really well in my class. And I remember them saying, like, can you please help us? Like, what is going on at school? What are some tricks that we can do at home? We're really struggling with discipline. I remember thinking, what do I have to offer? Like, I don't even have children of my own at that point. Like, I don't know what to say. Like, yes, in college, you take classes about classroom management and about behavior. But what I realize now as a parent is it is really nice to come at it from a teacher perspective and from a parent perspective. As a teacher, we are trained really with some restrictions when it comes to disciplining. There's a lot of things that are not appropriate, such as raising our voices at children or any kind of physical consequence for the kids. So you really have to learn as a teacher to be calm when you discipline. You have to learn to work with kids with a variety of needs all at once. So all that practice is really a great thing coming at a workshop like discipline. And also having the 4 kids, I mean, what greater experience can you have? But I know as a working mom, you come home at 5 o'clock at night, you have 4 kids, and your disciplining isn't always on par. So I'm going to bring a lot of perspective as far as that is concerned as well. But quick story, Aria, who is 8 years old, she's in 3rd grade. One of the things she's been working on that we've had tons of conversations over the past week is picking up after herself. Having 4 kids and 2 bathrooms upstairs, shower time is kind of crazy. So we're always having at least one kid take a shower in our room. And it's usually Aria. And when she gets out, she leaves her clothes all over the bathroom. This has been happening. Finally, I confronted her. I think this is 2 nights ago. And I said, Aria, we're trying to build this new habit. What do we need to do to make sure your clothes are off mommy's floor? And she's like, well, you could just remind me every day. I'm like, no. That's not how this is going to work. Too much energy. At this point, I'm just tired. I'm like, all right, you're going to have to figure this out. And if you can't figure it out, I have an option. I said, what we could do is, since you don't, take care of your things, maybe we could start getting rid of something from your room every time you leave the clothes on mommy's floor. And of course, that was not a good option. And she's like, nope, I'll come up with a better option to help me. And what I love about this kid and what we've been working on a long time is she writes this note, and I don't know if you can read it, but it says, Aria, don't forget to clean up your clothes in the bathroom. She literally tapes this to the outside of our glass in our shower, and this is her reminder. And I hope she's doing a better job, but it was really cool to see her take ownership of her behavior and to know that it's more than just giving consequences to a child. It's really training them up, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight. So when it comes to our mindset, we talked earlier about defining what is discipline. And if you had to fill in the blank right now, what would it be? Discipline is blank. Tonight, we really want to shift that mindset to what the true definition is. And discipline is the word training. So write down that word training. That's very different than offering rewards and punishment. Discipline, I want you to see it as training. And that means that as parents, we're going to cultivate habits. It's about habit development. And also, we really want to inspire our children to motivate themselves. In that Screen-Free Parenting book, one of the things that I love that they say is that we're not here for our children. We're actually disciplining, or we're taking care. I'm messing up the words here, but we're here not for them, but to serve their character or who they're going to be later on. So it's not about the here and now. We really want to do a service to them and who they're going to be. Now, this diagram, I want to explain a little bit because I think this is where we're at currently with our idea of discipline. If you're anything like I was, you really see this line in the center. And then in the middle, you have the bad choice or behavior. So your child makes a bad choice or a behavior. And then we really view discipline as what comes after that. We react to the bad behavior by giving a consequence. Okay, so that's how we view it. Our kids are acting badly. We have to punish them. That is our idea of discipline. And some of you are probably like, yep, that's what I thought. And we usually invest about 90% of our time and our energy and our effort into what is the magic consequence that I can give my child to change their behavior. And what I really want to do tonight is to shift to the other side before the bad choice or behavior. So we're looking at the left side. Discipline is really the training. It's a very proactive approach. Before they even make the bad decision, which is going to happen, there's sin, there's bad behaviors. Instead of spending the 90% on the right side, let's shift and do 90% of the training. And what you're going to see is there are far less bad choices that are happening. Yes, they happen. But when you invest on the left side, on the proactive approach, on the mindset being that discipline is training, you're going to see some amazing results. So that's a first shift that I want us all to make tonight. I really like this quote. I'm a big Charlotte Mason fan. She was an amazing educator. But she says here that every day, every hour, the parents are either passively or actively forming those habits in their children upon which, more than upon anything else, future character and conduct depend. When I first read that, there was a lot of responsibility in that sentence, but we have to think passively or actively. What kind of habits, what kind of training are we giving our children? What are we reinforcing on a daily basis? For some of us, we're reinforcing that anytime something happens in their life that is bad, they run to us and we're going to fight those battles for them. And yes, that's true sometimes, especially when they're little. But if we're constantly being their voice and taking care of everything, and on the playground, if they fall and just have a scratch, or if they are having a problem with another child, if they're constantly coming to us, we have to remember that we need to train them to have their own voice and to really be a part of that interaction and that communication. There's a ton of other things that we might passively or actively be forming, but I just want you to take some time to really think about that tonight. Now that we've shifted our mindset over to discipline is training and habit development, our school is huge on this. Our kids hear us talking about habits all the time. But there are some key points that I want to highlight, and this is where if you want to take some notes. When we talk about discipline as creating habits, it's going to take time, patience, practice, and focus. So let's break each one of these down a little bit. So for the first one, when we talk about time, a lot of stats out there said that if you want to build a habit or break a habit, it takes 21 days. I really like this woman named Caroline Leaf. She's actually, I think, a neuroscientist. But she actually says that it actually takes 3 cycles of 21 days to change a habit, to create a new habit. So what we're looking at is about 63 days, which is 3 months for us and for our kids to build habits. 3 months. So if you're anything like me and it's been a week and we've repeated the same statement about 1 trillion times, just know that it's going to take a little bit more time. But if you are consistent, you will get there. And what's so great about that is if you chunk your year into quarters, you can think about, wow, if we really develop some core habits each quarter that I can work on with my child, that's a lot of new habits for the course of a year. So stay with it, persistence. With that time, it takes patience. This is not going to happen overnight. It does take a lot of modeling. Training takes time. I mean, you talk to any coach and there is a training process to get them in the game. So have some patience as a parent and have some grace. And if anyone's going to benefit from the patience, it's actually going to be you. Thirdly, it takes practice. I'm going to give you some actual steps where when you're building a habit with a child, what you need to do. But know that with anything, they need to have practice. When they are going from a bad habit, especially to a good habit, lots of practice, doing it right, doing it wrong, being corrected, it needs to happen and on a daily basis. And finally, it takes focus. Now, what I mean by that is making sure that you are not overwhelming a child. One bit of feedback that RA gives me a lot is she gets very overwhelmed when I'm asking her to do multiple things at the same time. You know, me as a mom, and I'm a 1 on an Enneagram, I can have this amazing talent, not really, that you can walk into a room and I can identify everything that's wrong. Like this is a blessing and a curse. So I will walk into the house and I will be able to tell you everything that's out of place and we need to do this. And for Arya, or any child, that can be extremely overwhelming when I'm asking her to do tons of things. So when you're doing habits, I would recommend really focusing on 1 or 2 habits at a time for up to 3 months. So back to that time piece. If it takes 3 months, focus in on 1 or 2 habits. 1 is fine for those 3 months. So as a parent, you're like, oh, but there's all these things that we need to fix. But if you really take time to create that one habit, you're going to see results. So again, discipline is as habit development. I hope those things were helpful. Another great quote, this one from the Bible. From the moment, all discipline seems painful rather than pleasant, but later it yields the peaceful fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it. I know, what a great verse to hang up and circle that fruit of righteousness piece, because really that's the end game of all of this. So this is always a fun part. I think you can relate to it, but as experienced parents, we have a list of things that did not work. We've all been here. We've all done that, but I do want to identify a couple of them because I feel like they're these myths that we've passed down, and your grandmother did it and your mother did it and now you do it, or we've seen it on movies and we think this stuff works, but it really doesn't. So let's take some time to see what these things are. Number 1. Disciplining out of anger. I mean, even look at this clip art. If you look up discipline, everything seems to show an angry parent yelling at a child. But first and foremost, disciplining out of anger is not only harmful to really your child, but to yourself. We're going to talk a lot about your emotional state in a couple minutes. Using God's word as a weapon for punishment. This is a tricky one, but we want to remember and use the word of God as the gospel that brings truth and life. And sometimes before our kids have an understanding of the gospel, we begin early in the years using as the word of God to really say, this is the expectation. These are the morals, and you are sinning because you are doing this. And when a child is raised hearing that the Bible is constantly condemning their actions, they don't get to see the love of the gospel. So yes, you should be reading the Bible to your child and having conversations, but be really careful about when you are having those conversations about God's word. It shouldn't be used as a weapon with punishment. Another one that I have definitely done is threatening without consequences. And I mean, I've been in Publix a lot with other parents where, the child is misbehaving in the store, and the parent's like, stop crying, or we're going to leave this store right now. Stop crying, or, you're going to bed when you get home. And it's like threat after threat after threat after threat. And the kid knows, and I know, that they're not actually going to do those things. So threatening without actually giving a consequence, you really aren't going to have the trust of your child. And we're going to talk about being consistent. This is one thing that I think my mom did pretty well. Actually, I don't know if she's ever going to watch this, but I remember when I was much younger, I have 2 sisters. And we were arguing, carrying on one night. And the next day, we were actually supposed to go to Disney World. And I remember my mom coming in, and it was her final threat to us. You girls need to stop and to show some appreciation, or we are not going to be going on this trip tomorrow. We did not take her seriously. I mean, in this age, we are still younger. We continued to carry on. And believe me, we woke up the next day. I was going to get ready in my Disney shirt, and we did not go to Disney World. And from that point, I really feel like that was a stake in the ground where, like, my mom means business. And I took her very seriously after that. But make sure you are not threatening without actually giving the consequence. And the last one, man, I was a pro at this. The 1, 2, 3, counting to 3. I think this is the one, I don't know where we got this, maybe out of some book. But you usually see a parent say, Johnny, I need you to come here. 1, 2, and they start counting, and somehow there's this magical 3 that happens, and then your child listens to you. What you are actually doing, and think about this, what habit are you passively reinforcing? You are giving them the habit of they don't listen the first time, and they actually have 3 seconds to listen. So you're training them almost in disobedience. My dear friend, Mrs. Corteo, said she did this with her kids. And literally in high school, before her kids would do anything, there was always like a 3-second lag because she had developed that habit. So just simply switching and expecting them to listen right away rather than 3 seconds, you're going to see some difference in your child. So we've all been there, done that. I really love this quote. It says, don't you realize, Jason, that when you throw furniture out the window and tie your sister to a tree, you make mommy and daddy very sad? I just think that's hilarious. So one of the things I first want to pursue, and this is where Purvis comes in. She does a really great job at explaining this, is thinking about why is your kid acting like this? So we have that bad choice, and we look at the child, and immediately, usually we have some emotion with that. We want to give the consequence. But first, I want you to ask yourself, what need is that behavior communicating? Okay, so why might your kid be acting like this? Because a lot of times there's something else going on. Not all the time, but sometimes. So think about, is your child hangry or tired? Most of the behaviors in my house happen on the way home from school. My kids are exhausted. It's a long trip. They're hungry. They're sweaty from the playground. There's lots of things happening. So I always need to think about, do they need to take a nap? Do they need food? Packing that extra snack sometimes alleviates some of that bad behavior. Past trauma, this is a huge one. As teachers, we're really educated on this. Our teachers took some trauma training over the summer. Excuse me. But there's actually this thing called an ACE score. So when you go through the child, you think about what kind of trauma might have been in their childhood. And a lot of times that is some of the reasoning and actually predicts some of the behavior that you might see. And it could be anything from a divorce is actually on there, if there's any prenatal trauma, if there's any kind of abuse. So when you're talking to about adopting or fostering kids that might come with some of that trauma, that can show itself in a lot of interesting behaviors. So I encourage you, if you have a child that is going through something, really do your research and think about or read up about how trauma can affect behavior, and you might need to respond in a different way. Parents' relationships, that's a big one. And again, as a parent, you're like, oh, but your kids watch your every move. Most of a child's security comes from the relationship between mom and dad. So they are watching you and they are sensing that. You can automatically tell if you had a big fight in front of your child, they're going to behave in a certain way. So we'll give you some ideas too on how you can strengthen that relationship in front of your child so that they have some of that security. Another thing to think about are just life circumstances in general. What have they gone through? Another thing to consider that I like to talk to a lot of my parents about is if your child is, for some reason, if they're like on the autism spectrum or if they have some sensory, there's a lot of pieces, even connected to your body and your brain functioning, that is going to affect some of those behaviors. And you have to think about all these things as you're entering into this thing called discipline or training. So here's how you proactively set them up for success. Remember that little line that I gave you guys with the bad behavior? We're on the left side. So what can you do before we even talk about the behavior? Here's some great suggestions. A praying parent, of course, number one, praying over your child, praying over their heart, praying over that habit, that behavior. That can be pretty amazing. And please, please make sure that's part of your routine. The love language workshop we have usually in February, but make sure that you are filling your child's love tank. I've seen this a lot, even with my own children or the children at school. You know, for some parents, they might think that that child feels love or feels security when I buy them gifts. So, you know, you might buy them something from Publix, or that might be a reward for their behavior. When a lot of kids, what I'm noticing is all they're really wanting is quality time. Quality time and gifts are two different love languages. So understanding what your child is really craving from you, and making sure you fill their love tank is really important, and will again build that trusting relationship with your child, and you'll see actually less behavior because of that. Healthy foods are huge. A lot of parents, it's awesome that a lot of people in our culture actually are seeing and noticing that things like dyes and preservatives and even gluten can have a drastic effect on behavior. Number one would be sugar. That's actually why we don't eat anything with sugar or added preservatives. We really stick to whole foods at the school because we can see behavior is directly related also to what you're putting in your body. Provide a calm and loving environment. Calm is a really big one, making sure that it's a peaceful place. Couch time. This is a great suggestion. This is from, I think, Growing God's Kids God's Way. If you're not familiar with couch time, it's a really simple thing, but every time. I've done it with my husband. It's been amazing. Okay, well, let me explain what couch time is before you guys start thinking of other things. So couch time is when you and your spouse sit on the couch and have an intentional conversation with one another in front of your children. I know this sounds crazy, but if you think about it, we usually rush the kids off to bed and then mommy and daddy have their conversations after the kids are gone, or we even do our Bible studies when the kids are asleep, and they're never seeing that kind of intimate conversation. So here's how it works. Let's say you guys get home from work and you're going to say at 5 o'clock, we're going to sit on the couch and have a conversation. You tell the kids, hey, mommy and daddy are going to have some couch time together. We're going to talk to one another. If you guys could play or do something else, we need some mommy and daddy time because our relationship comes first. I know that's another thing your kids are going to be like, what do you mean you guys come first? But you do. And so you sit and you just talk. You need to know that the first time you do this, your kids are going to interrupt you every 2 seconds. They're going to look at you like you're crazy, like, why aren't you talking to us? But just start to build that process and start watching your children look at you two as you have these intentional conversations. They only need to be about 5 minutes. You have eye contact, hold each other's hands. It is remarkable the difference you're going to see in your kids. I know this sounds crazy, but someone should literally run an experiment on couch time with your kids' behavior. But just be cognizant and think through it. It sounds silly, but I love to hear your comments on how that goes for you guys. Another great way to set up your children for success when it comes to discipline and habit formation is the family meeting. Eventually, I'd love to write a book with my husband about this one, but the family meeting is really cool. And it's a time where you come together as a family, and it's usually after dinner time or once a week. And you guys talk as a family about your values that you value as a family. You check in and you celebrate together. You talk about your goals and your habits. There's a lot to the family meeting. I might actually do a workshop later this year on it, but it's really amazing when I sit down with my husband and my 4 kids, and all the kids talk about their day and they talk about their wins and we all clap for them. And, you know, my 2-year-old knows that her goal is going to the potty by herself, and my 8-year-old knows that it's picking up her clothes off. But we all support each other in our habits, and we have that communication on a weekly basis. It creates and strengthens your family. So moving on, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart it. Again, thinking forward to what discipline is really all about. So what works? We are now experts on what hasn't worked. And now we want to work on what does work. So I'd love to give you some suggestions. What works? Keeping in mind, again, this is Charlotte Mason, that the habits of a child produce the character of a man. And this second quote I really, really like. It says, parent-child relationships that include healthy communication and the ability to set limits is the #1 factor, and look what it influences: self-esteem, social competence, academic success, and psychosocial development of children. That is huge. So we want to make sure we are doing those things, and I'll give you some examples of how. So the first piece that I wanted to talk about is really the training process. So when you have a habit and you want your child to work on it, how do you actually train a child in habit development? So here's a simple list of 5 things, and we're going to work through these together. So you can even start tomorrow if you want. So #1, you and your husband, or husband and wife, you're going to sit down and you're going to first start to think about each of your children and what behavior or habit is important for my child to learn right now. #2, I'm going to talk about how you can model that expectation, and then we'll work through some of the lists. But I want to go to that next one and spend some time on that #1 step. What behavior habit is important for my child to learn right now? And here are some examples. Maybe one of them really stands out to you and you want to write it down, but here are some examples or habits that we've worked on or a lot of parents want to try. So the first one might be, my child needs to learn to not interrupt and to wait for my attention. So you have one of those childs that it's constantly, mommy, 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 when you're trying to talk on the phone or talk to another adult. And what you're really developing is you want to model to your child showing respect to others, learning to have self-control. So that's a really important goal. And again, when you're thinking about the character of who they're going to be. One suggestion that we'll talk about in a little bit is called the interrupt rule. And what you can do to help your child interrupt well, I guess I should say, or politely. So if I don't hit that, remind me in the comments and I'll get back to what that is. The second part, or another behavior habit that you might want to try, is to listen to instruction the first time. So if you're one of those parents where you've said 1, 2, 3, and your child isn't listening, it's taking them an hour and they still haven't done the thing. This is every child, by the way. Maybe you want to focus on just that piece, listening to instruction. So what you're actually building in that child is respect. You're building a servant heart, obedience. You're building safety, because if they're not listening to you right away, that could create an unsafe environment for them, and also hard work. So what that means, and what I wanted to explain about instructing them to obey the first time. What does that look like? If you've been using like 1, 2, 3 your whole life, how do you transition into helping them understand and listen right away? What I would suggest is this process that I have written down here, is that you're going to model and ask them to listen to what you're telling them to do. Johnny, go pick up your blocks off the floor. Then they need to give you a verbal response. Okay, mommy. They're looking at your eyes when they're saying it. Then they need to repeat the direction to you. Mommy, I'm going to go pick up my blocks. Then they go do it. And then, this is the bonus, the A+, they come back and check in. Mommy, I'm done picking up my blocks. Some of you are like, yeah, right. That sounds like a dream, which it is, and still a dream in our house, but we're working on it. It's just another way that you can help them develop that habit. And I'll show you again, how do you actually do that? But that should be the expectation, that they listen, that they say yes, or they look at you and you know that they heard you, that they can repeat that direction, and then they can go off and do it. I know with Atlas, who's my 6-year-old, his big key thing is he has to repeat it back to me. Even if we have eye contact, sometimes his brain is in like a totally different place. And when he verbally tells me what the directions were, I know that he has it, and he's much more likely to go and actually do the thing. Another great behavior or habit that you might want to work on is verbalizing emotions rather than acting out. So you might see a lot of kids, and my kids have done this before too. If they're like throwing or hitting, or they get to this place of just complete breakdown, a lot of times they aren't able to cool themselves down, to calm themselves down, and really communicate their emotions. And this is great for any parent to work through. Instead of constantly punishing your child every time they have a tantrum or every time they're screaming, it's much more effective to model the correct behavior and help them practice getting to that calm place and how to regulate their emotions and how to verbalize. So when you help a child verbalize emotions rather than acting out, you're helping them develop a lot of things, such as self-control, communication, trust, and respect. I would encourage you to create a calm corner in your house where they can do this work, where they can go and calm themselves down. There's a lot of charts on Pinterest that have like emojis and feelings where a child can point to what they're feeling if they're not able to verbalizing. And this habit is going to be so great for a child. Any of these, if your child isn't interrupting, if they're listening to the instruction the first time, if they're verbalizing their emotions, that would be a win for all of us. And again, you're only picking one of these at a time to focus on. So I hope all of you did number 1 right now with me. What behavior or habit is important for your child right now? And go ahead and write that down if you'd like. Okay, back to our list. So number 1, you choose the habit or behavior. Number 2, what you're going to do to train them in this habit is silly, but you're going to parent role play and you're going to model your expectation. As a teacher, we call this the I do. So you're going to go to your child, and if your habit is, let's say, listening right away, you're going to say, okay, Johnny, I want you to watch. Mommy asks you a question. This is what I want you to do. Okay. Johnny, I want you to tell me to go through the whole process. You're going to say, yes, Johnny, I'm going to go pick up my toys. You're going to go over there. You're going to role play. You're going to pick up the toys. You're going to come back to Johnny, and you're going to say, I'm all done picking them up. And you have just modeled for your child the exact expectation, and they know exactly what to do. Next in the training process, number 3, is you're going to practice together. So you're going to say, okay, Johnny, let's go practice cleaning up our toys and listening the first time. So Johnny, ready? Okay, ready? I want you to go pick up your toys, and together you're going to work through like, yes, ma'am, or yes, mommy, pick up my toys. You're going to go do it together. You're going to come back. You're going to celebrate. It's all wonderful. That's the we do. You do it together. The last part is the you do. You're going to ask your child to practice on their own in front of you. I know this sounds crazy, but it's going to work. You're going to say, okay, Johnny, you're going to do it by yourself. They're going to go through the whole process. You praise. It's wonderful. You have just trained and modeled for your child a new habit. This is what I love about teaching. It's so amazing. You just taught them a new habit and you were part of that. Just think, if you started doing that, what an amazing change you would see in your child. Now, that's step 5. I drew a line underneath this because that is not going to solve all of your problems. You're not going to go step 1 through 4, train them, off you go, and suddenly they're a new child. This takes like 3 months, right? So the step 5 is the independent practice, the correction, and the praise cycle. So every day you're going to continue to focus. You're going to continue to talk to your child. You're going to give them instruction. You're going to praise them. You're going to correct them when they do not do it correctly. And you're going to talk through and develop this until it does start to become an independent habit. And step 5 is really the trickiest. You guys know it's tricky to do that on a consistent basis. But believe me, if you really focus on this and they're clear about your expectation, it will happen. I've seen it happen before. Now that you kind of learned how to develop those habits, so we've gone through the training process, I want to give you some of the day-to-day. So when you're on number 5 and you're in that independent practice and your child is practicing these new habits, what does the day-to-day look like? As a parent, can a lot of people are like, just give me some advice. What should I do? So let's go on to that slide. And when we're thinking about the day-to-day, as a parent, you need to think about what can you actually control? A lot of times we approach discipline and we think, I can control my child's behavior. That is not really true. Really, all that you can control is your own behavior. So I'm going to give you some hints, tricks, tips as a teacher, as a parent on things you can do day to day over what do you have control of. Number 1, what I'd like you to try is making sure whenever you're training or disciplining that you have eye contact at eye level with your child. So get down to their level, make sure they are looking at you in the eyes when you give instruction or you have conversations. This will solve half of your problems because when you're trying to scream at a child across the room and they're not listening, they're off doing something else, that's where a lot of the communication problem happens. The second thing that we've talked about is what you can control is your love tank. And filling up your children, giving them that love that they need, but also thinking about yourself, making sure that you're taking care of yourself. You can control that, making sure that you're getting some rest and that you're getting the love that you need as well. Number 3, giving 2 positive options. Here's what I mean. This is a great teacher tool. When you are asking a child to do something and let's say they haven't listened to you, all right, like what's next? So if we have a child and they're not let's say walking in line with us and they didn't listen the first time. So the second time, what we're going to do is we're going to give them 2 positive options. Each one of them gets them to do the thing we want to do. So it could be something like, Johnny, you have 2 choices. Your first choice is you can either stand up and walk in line with us to PE. Or your second option is that you can stand next to me and we can hold hands and walk out together. Okay, so both of those choices are going to get them to do the thing that you want them to do, which is to walk out to PE. But they feel like they have a choice and they're going to think about it in their little minds and they're going to do that thing. Okay, so 2 positive options, great trick as a teacher. Number 4, be consistent. Like we said before, if you're giving threats and consequences and all that stuff, but you're not being consistent what you're saying, you really need to work on that as a parent. And you need to have what you do be louder than what you say. For a lot of kids, you could give them threats and verbalize and communicate over and over and reason with them all day long, but actually doing the consequence is going to solve the problem. So instead of talking about the consequence, just do it right away. Next on the list, we have respond, don't react. This should have been number 1 by far. In one of the books, I think it's Grace-Based Discipline, they talk about the difference. So if you think about a fireman and there's a house that's on fire, us on the outside would think, oh my gosh, there's a house on fire. We should just go sprinting in the house to save whoever we need to save. A firefighter is actually trained totally differently. They are trained to walk slowly into the burning house, to assess what's around them, to proceed further, to assess what's around them. And that is the difference between responding and reacting. When we react and just run into a burning fire, we're actually possibly going to injure ourselves. But when we respond and we survey what's around us and we get ourselves to a really calm, rational state, we make better choices. So when your kid is acting out, sometimes I have to put myself in a calming corner or shut the door or go in the bathroom because I am angry and I need to make sure that I get to a calm place so I can respond to the behavior and not react, because that's a lot of times when I make my poor choices. Next, do over don't. Try to say do instead of the word don't. So easy example, a lot of us are like, don't run. Instead, you should say walk. So giving them that expectation is much clearer in a child's head. Because if you think about, if you just say don't touch your hair, don't, pull the carpet, they now know what not to do, but they're still not clear on what they should do. So always telling them the expectation, using the word do instead of don't. Next, say yes. This is an awesome one. Definitely not natural for me. My husband's great at saying yes and letting the kids just be kids and do crazy things sometimes. That can be awesome. If we're constantly the no parent, it's no fun. I loved one day after school, it was raining, it was muddy, and we actually had a couple parents where the kids were like, can we please still play outside? And the parents were like, yes. Their kids got messy, they got wet, they got dirty. But how awesome was that they're not just always a no parent, but there are sometimes we can just say yes to our kids. And last but not least, model forgiveness. When we talk about modeling forgiveness, this is a big piece. Let me give you an example of what happens at school with our kids. If there's an issue between two children, we teach them how to communicate their concern to the other child. So the two kids talk to each other rather than coming to a teacher first. So they'll say to each other, Johnny again, Johnny, you hurt my feelings, when you said that in class. And then Johnny would have to respond to that and say, I'm sorry that I hurt your feelings. The other child then says, I forgive you. And of course, we teach them to do this with a real heart of forgiveness. And this is a change, because if you think most of the time we've been trained to say, oh, it's okay, but really it's not okay. So we're teaching our kids not to just to say that bad behavior is okay, but to give forgiveness. And what that looks like means that our relationship can continue. So model that with your kids. If they're having a really hard day and they need some time out, they come back to you, you have a conversation, and you always end with those words, I forgive you. So they feel that there is that grace there. Now, last but not least, keep this in perspective, guys. I am here with you. I mean, if you take a look at this picture, that is blueberry smoothie on my couch. Those are sequins and buttons all over my floor when I was trying to do work. Aria is hanging from something. Atlas had stitches. It is like chaos and craziness, and always preparing for these discipline workshops are really humbling, because I feel like I just teach myself what I need to do better. But really keep it in perspective, because this is the long game. This is the objective. Discipline and training creates our kids to be who God wants them to be later on. So I love these pictures from my dear friend, Mrs. Corteo, but she's in a different place in life where she's now seeing that fruit of righteousness with her kids. When you get to see your child marry someone and be a spectacular husband or wife, when you see them be baptized and graduate and do what they were created to do, it's going to be an awesome time to know that we trained them well, that it wasn't about finding the magic punishment or reward to get our kids to behave a certain way, but that we trained up their hearts and their minds in Christ, but also just teaching them to be the people that they were created to be and modeling that behavior. I hope you guys found this all helpful. Again, let me check over at our comments. I didn't see any comments come up, but if you have any, please send those my way. There is my email address, jserrano@igniteacademy.education. If you have any questions, check out our website. If you are a guest tonight, so glad you're here, you can check out our website, igniteacademy.education. If you'd like to take a tour, we are offering those virtually or after school hours right now. So if you guys have any questions, want to learn more, want to get on our newsletter to find out when that nutrition workshop is, we'd love to connect with you. Thank you all for being the type of parent that wants to watch a webinar at 8 o'clock at night. I think that's pretty fantastic. Thankful to be part of the Ignite community and just raise our kids up together. And I hope you guys have a fantastic night. See you later.